Look at the.
The foreclosure amendment to foreclosure legislation. Or
Okay,
3 minutes.
3 minutes to present.
Okay,
To
very brief.
present?
Okay, so we'll be very brief.
Yeah. Okay, so ready for us already? We are saying.
Yeah. Hmm.
She says go ahead.
I think she has. You have the action points.
Isn't it there? The answers, what we said. Yeah,
Okay, we've come to the end of the breakout sessions. Thank you all for your active participation. We hope that much was yielded from the dialogues at the tables. And at this juncture, we want to turn your attention to the first table presenting. We are back live on air, so we would appreciate a bit of quiet to ensure that everyone can hear the contributions. So we are going to begin with the first table, and this is post the breakout sessions. We're now at the point of the presentation of presenting the action points from the breakout sessions. So state your name and the organization you represent and the thematic area for you.
St. Rose Institute of Chartered Accountants of the Eastern Caribbean Business Insolvency. Andrea St. Rose, President of Institute of Chartered Accountants of the Eastern Caribbean. No, because I have to read. Yeah. Right. Should I continue? Yeah. We have formed the view that the Insolvency Act is a relatively new piece of legislation. It has not been tested significantly for that matter. So far, we've had one case, I am told, which tested the legislation. And so we have formed the view that there is need to sort of like review the legislation, form a team committee to determine whether there are any areas where we require any amendments or changes. In particular, the Bankers Association has a concern with respect to the autonomy in terms of realizing on the underlying securities. We also indicated that the insolvency requirements should be part of an online platform that would allow for us to track what is happening with respect to the status of proceedings, etc. And the NCPC will work with the Office of the Insolvency Department in that regard.
Okay, so just to add some further context, Ron Leo, President of the Bankers Association, and to make this very plain for everybody in the room, we want to commit to making it easier for young persons to access credit for larger loans in the same manner that they could access credit for a vehicle loan. I started by saying that earlier this morning. But a lot of persons don't understand why there is such hesitation and such hindrances when trying to access credit outside of a vehicle loan. And looking at the difference in foreclosure on a vehicle versus foreclosure on actual property, immovable property, is a key thing for us. We want to be able to tell the young person who's had a job for 2 years, that we could give you that loan just as easy that we'll give you a car for $50,000. It should not be that I could get a car so easy and I'm struggling to get a piece of St. Lucia. So this here is the key. We also want to be able to give persons, small businesses, access to finance by looking at other forms of security that we could hold. I have stock. I have an asset by way of my music, which is a trademarked asset. How exactly can a financial institution use that for me to access credit? And that's a conversation that's going on. We have opened the appetite for that, and it's something that we've set a strict timeline towards implementation. So that's the context for what we're speaking of here.
So with respect to supporting legislation for restructuring, we have formed the view that it is adequate and sufficient. However, there may be some opportunities to allow for reduced costs. Say, for example, if an individual owns property, that for restructuring purposes, they want to transfer that property to a body corporate, 2 sets of fees would have to be incurred. One, the individual who owns the property would have to pay vendor's tax by transferring the property to the corporation, and the corporation would have to pay another set of taxes, some duties, when they acquire that property. So we are saying that the same way, for example, when you have a merger where you do not have, fees incurred when 2 companies come together, the same sort of accommodation could be made with respect to restructuring of entities. I think that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you very much. Next table, ready to present? Okay. What's the name of the theme? Business location. Okay, just to let you know, before you leave sooner than the end, we do have a reception immediately after this. So we invite you to stick around for continued networking and interaction, learning more about your co-forum attendees. Thanks.
Afternoon, everyone. We were dealing with business location and some of the challenges or the process. The top 3 issues we brought up, we raised, and we were fortunate because our table had PS from Physical Development, Tourism, we have the head of Invest St. Lucia, we have DCA, we have Sovereign Free Zone, we have the head of Architects, and 2 local realtors. So we had a good table. So as part of the sales process, what we agreed is that it would have been great for commercial properties to have one database, and we thought that Invest St. Lucia is well suited. Even local people, local St. Lucians with commercial land for sale, it would reside within the Invest St. Lucia database as one central place that anyone in business interested in a location could go and find.
Because as it stands right now, people are not able to access or we don't know where the commercial lots are. So if someone comes to us asking us where they can find, or if they want to open a coconut oil plant and we need a commercial lot to do that, we don't know where to find it. So there's no access, there's no database where all of us collectively can go so that we know where the lots are.
I think there's an obvious omission, and that is Crown Lands. We feel that Crown Lands should be in that database, but we were advised that if that happens, then it'll lead to squatting. But Crown Lands is accessible, but directly through them. Yep. The second issue we raised was that of the alien landholding license, which we've spoken ad infinitum about today. That's still an issue, and we spoke about the reciprocity within the CARICOM region. Once they offer it in their country, we offer it. Then outside of the CARICOM, then you have to go through the process. We spoke about a tracker, an online tracker, for almost all services dealing with government, where the client, local or otherwise, could just log in, just like a British passport, and see at what stage their application is. Lawyers in the room, around the table, you didn't have a good rap, because people were saying that when lawyers say it's with the registry, when they check, it's not with the registry at all. But we're not going to debate that here. So a tracker will solve the problem. People can go on and log in and see where your case is. They didn't mention any names, you know. And finally, throughout the process of building and setting up a business and looking for land for that, the issue that is pervasive is one, contractor qualification and having a list of approved contractors. Because what happens then is that we have a number of disputes where clients who paid the money, business people paid the money, have no economic redress for shorty work, timeline violation, and just finishing. Right now, if you have to bring a case, even when you have a contract that's tight, they just say they have no money, and you're left holding the bag. I do know that there are some jurisdictions where you have builders insurance and project insurance that we can probably offer in St. Lucia, but more importantly, a process that allows us to have some civic redress within a reasonable time frame. That's what we came up with as the three top issues for us. Oh, go ahead, finish. I'm finished.
I think they're finished. And now, dispute resolution, table ready? Wonderful.
Thank you. Good afternoon. On the dispute resolution, we sought to deal with, we were really, the facilitator asked us to deal with two main issues we want to see done in a short period of time. So while with court litigation, there are issues, but the issues come from issues of staffing, and we are building a new court, but we need more judges in our system to move the system forward. At one point, we had 3 civil judges, but I think we have only 2 civil judges right now, which we need to get back to our 3 or 4 judges in that respect. We spoke about alternative dispute resolution. Mediation is a court-connected mediation. There's also private mediation. That works quite well. They're well trained by the court, Supreme Court. Arbitration Act needs to be revamped to bring it up to speed and issues of forum, issues as to which model we use for arbitration for the purpose of enforcement. So that needs to be done in terms of agenda from the AG's office, in terms of arbitration, new arbitration act for St. Lucia. Our 2 main dispute resolution issues were, we have a labor code, which the legislation works quite well, but to support the legislation in terms of disputes, we have to go to the labor tribunal. And we think the labor tribunal is very inefficient, and it's not its fault or the personnel's fault, but when you have institutions that are run by in some cases, they're lay persons, and they're people who also have other jobs, it'll always be inefficient. Labor disputes are 2 important issues that we should have people who are doing part-time work on it. And I believe like places like similar to Antigua or even Trinidad, we need a labor court. We need a dedicated labor court to deal with labor disputes with the modern labor code that we have. It's not good enough to have a labor tribunal where you have laypersons sitting on it, headed by a lawyer who has their own private practice. That's inefficient. It's not going to work. We need a labor court. They make actual decisions, and then people go on to the Supreme Court. That's needed in that respect. So that's one of the first things we need for dispute resolutions. The second one we looked at from a public service point of view. We believe the Public Service Commission, as constituted, will always remain inefficient because sometimes the chairpersons or the board think they're beholden to the political electorate of the day, directorship, I should say, of the day. And we believe that the Public Service Commission, being a disciplinary body in its own rights, and also one who looks at promotions for people, should be perhaps be headed by a retired judge, as opposed to a person. And so you have lawyers who head the commission as well. But you need somebody who has no skin in the game, perhaps. And the Public Service Commission is a constitutional body. And so it's not treated like that. It's supposed to be independent. And we believe perhaps you could get some independence if you have a judicial officer, retired judicial officer who heads the commission. We found at the table you had many issues coming up where persons are referred to the Public Service Commission for disputes, things that come up, but yet the Public Service Commission deals with it with a slap on the wrist. is not taken seriously. We got scenarios where people were they on leave for disciplinary issues for 5-6 years, collecting pay, and nothing is happening, things of that sort. Or people who are involved in theft in one department, they move to a different department by the Public Service Commission to deliver cash again in another department, on so on, so on, so on. I mean, that just sounds ridiculous, but it's happening. And one has to wonder, but how could the Public Service Commission not get that right? So we believe the Public Service Commission needs to be strengthened. Another issue that came up, that came up as well, was that there should be a difference between their commissions and their boards, and so it's the same board issue. But when the commission deals with more regulatory issues, like you have, there's more work involved. You have the tax commission, you have the Consumer Protection Commission, the different commissions that they involve in where persons have to sit down, listen to complaints, deal with files, more time. Perhaps the fees that are allocated for those persons serving on that should be higher, as opposed to boards where you have issues of more corporate governance. So like the Tourism Authority is more of a corporate governance body, as opposed to a body that deals with a commission, like a tax commission, who sit down and listen to cases, listen to complaints, deal with the issue. There should be a separation and recognition of that, because more time is needed to deal with issues of that sort. So these are our issues. Sorry? Yes, that's treated as a job, yes. Because it involves your use of your expertise. Yeah. Thank you.
I believe we have, thank you, Mr. Antoine. I believe we have the general table ready to make their presentation.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon, colleagues. I don't believe we're recognizing protocols anymore. Right, so my name is Joseph Dolor, and I'm representing the Insurance Council of St. Lucia, and I am representing my colleagues over there who did a fantastic job crafting the general ease of doing business in St. Lucia. So we approach this topic by first defining what, or describing rather, what we think the environment is of doing businesses in St. Lucia. And not to be too negative, but it is somewhat of a stressful, expensive, and bureaucratic environment. And the root causes of those are several. One thing that came off from the one of the panel discussions earlier this morning was a lot of the stakeholders would have presented several of the plans to curb some of the challenges that they're experiencing, which were all good. But what we thought came through that was each of those plans were happening in isolation of each other. And there was no cohesion and synergy between what all of the stakeholders are presenting. So while improvement in every sector would help, we believe one unified standard, national standard across the board would be better, and have all of the key stakeholders, of course, tag into that and seem to achieve one key goal and one objective. And that is going to not just craft the overall ease of doing business on the island, but create somewhat of a culture of excellence for how we seek to do business and what standards we're trying to uphold throughout all sectors of us doing business. The root causes, if I were to be specific, one, the coherent standards throughout all of the key stakeholders. Poor customer service, of course, that came through from our previous discussion as well. And again, the lack of a national standard as it relates to customer service. What are we as a nation seeking to present to the world, to ourselves? What is the standard? And that is not just for the public sector, it's also for the private sector as well. We really do need to establish one standard of excellence as a country. We market ourselves as a lead tourism destination, and we should, because we are one of the most beautiful countries on earth. But I believe tagging along with that marketing of the destination, we should also be marketing ourselves as a destination of excellence. So when persons come to visit our shores, they can come with a certain level of expectation in terms of the standard of what they would receive as a visitor to our shore, as an investor to our country, and as a national living in this, as a citizen as well, living in this country. So I believe that is very, very important to have this woven into whatever national policy that is developed from this initiative today, hoping, of course, that it's not just a talk shop and actually some meaningful action comes out of it. The bureaucratic processes where we have a system where, one, the sectors are not communicating with each other, key sectors are not communicating with each other. To complete one transaction requires one jumping from various offices and various departments throughout the country. We believe that we ought to be able to create a more efficient system, and we welcome again, a lot of the key stakeholders were talking about digitization and improving and modernizing their processes. Again, it may be more feasible as opposed to each department and each stakeholder developing some very expensive services and platforms. It may be more feasible to have one platform that we all can tie into and maximize the return on our investment in that way. Just a thought. Poor communication, of course, between various key stakeholders. Poor communication of what is required to complete various transactions. So we heard earlier again this morning of one of the panelists sharing her personal experience, and that is an experience I'm sure that we all have experienced in one way or the other, trying to conduct one transaction or the other, where you're pretty much wasting a lot of time trying to get a simple transaction completed. We believe we can do better than that as a people. Recommendations, several recommendations that are going to be driven, or should be driven rather, by the SLASPER public sector, government, of course, Ministry of Finance as well. So we're looking at, one, to address and all of this, I should say, really creates a very expensive environment for business owners to operate within. One example would be the congestion of shipping at the Castries port. And we want to recommend that some serious thought and consideration be placed in doing what is necessary to improve the capacity of the Vieux Fort port to ensure that some of that congestion is eased off from the Castries port, and also to significantly reduce the cost of business persons for the businesses in the south. So they don't have to pay huge costs, exorbitant costs in transportation costs, having to bus containers from Castries to Vieux Fort if there is a port right there that can be utilized with probably a small investment to bring it up to capacity and whatever repairs that needs to be done. We also want to recommend the Public Service Ministry to revisit the onboarding and orientation of new entrants into the government service to ensure that persons coming into this service are coming in with that established standard that I spoke of earlier in terms of customer service, in terms of what is required and the standards required for them. And we also recommend that that ministry not only do an orientation for new entrants, but there should be a system and a policy in place to ensure that proper monitoring and evaluation is done, and there is proper performance evaluation that is tied to accountability. There must be accountability for persons working within our sector for not doing the simple requirements and responsibility of the jobs that they're hired to do. There ought to be accountability. It shouldn't be that a person who is not performing is simply transferred from one department or one ministry to the other. Has happened for too long. The last thing we want to recommend is definitely a serious look, and that ties into I was very pleased to hear the comments from the president of the Bankers Association speaking to the availability of financing for persons to start businesses and to be able to invest. We would like to see not just the availability of funds, but we would like to see also the fair properly communicated requirements for qualification for those funds. So it shouldn't be a situation where Tom can qualify and get access to monies, whereas Jill, who may have a business plan that is just as tight, an idea that is just as promising, but you're denied funding just because of some unwritten something. Yes? And the timeline for the execution of a lot of those projects, some of them, of course, can be done immediately. Our Prime Minister did mention that some of the ideas from this talk is going to be featured in his next presentation. So we believe that some of those can be done within a 4 to 6 month time frame, and some may be between a month to 12 months. But we're calling for some action to happen now. Hey, thank you.
Thank you. We're moving along swiftly to financial services.
Good afternoon to everyone. Protocol having been established. My name is Flavia Cherry and I represent SLISBA. Under the subject of financial services, we looked at main barriers to accessing credit, and some of the key issues that came out were, for example, inefficiency and insensitivity by bank representatives and staff towards MSMEs. And we saw some of the root causes of that, for example, cultural barriers and the tendency to look down on those who are in the perception of some lesser. And there's a real urgent need to address this. The recommendations for this is education for persons working directly with the vulnerable persons in our society. For example, farmers and really small businesses, micro businesses. We also looked at another barrier as the lack of proper financial records. That has been from time immemorial, and we felt that there's urgent need to address education not only to small groups but to the masses, and that training needs to be financial literacy and record keeping. And there was an inquiry about to what extent even at TVET or at the school level, is there training on financial literacy and entrepreneurship to build a kind of culture which enables more and more small business people to not only come into doing small business, but to operate it effectively and to make a profit. In terms of the same barriers, we looked at the need for improved turnaround time, and one of the points made at the table was, for example, the MSME loan grants, where a small business could be given a loan for 3 years, approved and receive the first check, and 2 years later waiting for the second check. And by waiting for the second check so long afterwards, the business could even collapse. And that, especially for a representative of small business, is really unacceptable, and it poses significant challenges to the very small businesses that we're trying to empower. In terms of collateral requirements, we felt that the introduction of the ECPGC, I'm not sure if I said it correctly. Right, it's the ECPCGC, which is located in St. Kitts. It's actually a very good initiative, and we felt that there should be greater awareness and more information across the board so that more persons could be aware of this facility and to access it. Also, the collateral registry, this is another very good initiative that has gone a very good way, but there is need for greater awareness, and we felt that the banks and the business support organizations and the ECPCGC is going to come together to make this happen. In terms of current loan programs, in terms of the Bank of St. Lucia, there appears to be some level of efficiency and effectiveness, but there's need for special programs, especially for MSMEs, for example, with the SLDB, and especially targeting those that are very critical right now, well, always been, that is small manufacturers and farmers. Because if we look at what is happening in the world right now, there has never been a more critical time for us to take farming seriously, and our farming representative from Slisbury can stand and talk for the whole day on that subject, because we feel a lot more needs to be done, especially to provide aid and grants to farmers, because more and more young people are not attracted to farming, do not want to take the farms over from their parents because they see it is so labor intensive, and when they see how much their parents suffer as farmers, they are not attracted to it. But we really, really need food security. So in terms of loan programs, we want to suggest that there should be more effective programs and special programs for those sectors. Financial literacy, there's need to collaborate with special service providers to MSMEs to assist them. Some persons don't have the capacity to understand or to do it on their own. So we thought that there should be more training, hands-on training, practical training, and innovative training that will actually meet the needs of the sector, because there are lots of issues which include lack of literacy, lack of digital literacy and other literacy, making it difficult for those that are targeted to fully take advantage of existing programs. And in order to improve access to financing for small businesses, we felt that there should be special consideration for those critical sectors. Like I said earlier, we cannot enforce that more. I wish we had an opportunity to actually listen to some of the farmers on the ground, and so that they could have explained what they go into, but we won't have the time to do that. So understanding that MSMEs are different from corporate and other persons, and that there needs to be special and differential conditions for us to really meet the needs of the MSMEs, and most importantly, so that those who provide the services are sensitive and treat them as human beings and treat them right, because the MSMEs are the anchor of St. Lucia's economy, and if we treat them right, it's going to be to the better of all of us. Thank you.
Market competition, are you ready? Market competition.
And again, everyone, we benefited from a diverse group discussing market competition. We had the benefit of producers, local producers. We also had the benefit of importers. We had the benefit of the public service and the private sector. So there was robust discussions taking place in our group. We had a disagreement as to whether local businesses were in fact disadvantaged as compared to importers. As some of the groups believed that there would have been a need for more to be done by the administration to support local businesses, whereas you had importers who felt that quite a bit was being done to the detriment of importers who had to deal with the buy local campaigns, the additional taxes, etc., on imported goods, and they believed that there was sufficient being done. So we were unable to agree as to whether there is a substantial disadvantage based on some of the recommendations meted out to the team by the importers. They believe that the reason that we feel so is because the concessionary opportunities available to some of the importers is not known to them. Not the importers, sorry, to the producers locally is not known to them. So we were able to express to some of the local producers that there are quite a few regimes for concessions under the Ministry of Agriculture, under the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Commerce, but some entities and some producers are not aware of the vast slew of concessions that are available to persons, and the grants by way of the Youth Economy Agency, the Ministry of Commerce. Some of these are actually not known by some individuals, and that leads them to believe that they are at a disadvantage, albeit the mechanisms to assist them are in existence. They also believe that the buy local campaigns and some of the other campaigns which have been put in place are not really seeing sufficient penetration, that they are insufficient to surmount the challenges posed by social media, which make imported goods more attractive. So simply saying to the general public to buy local by itself is not enough of an impetus for these persons to really want to buy local when they're seeing on their social media feeds and they're seeing on the television other goods that they may be more familiar with or may have more of an appetite for. So there should be some consideration to looking at something more than just to buy local, but giving some additional rationale as to why we should buy local. Is it safer? Are the products of a higher quality? Or what really is the driving force outside of just wanting to support my local compatriots? Why am I really buying local? We spoke on some of the challenges with enforcement of standards for local products as well. Yes, there's a need for us to support our local products, but are they meeting the same standard of the products being imported into the country? Are they consistently meeting that standard? Are they able to show that they're meeting that standard? Because if they're not, again, you have challenges in satisfying yourself that we should, in fact, always buy local. We spoke on the impact of the F in CIF and how that causes great issues for some of the importers. When you have a substantial change in the freight cost, it impacts both the importer who's bringing in the goods, and more importantly, it impacts the customs duties which are calculated on the CIF. So it is when we discuss imported inflation, it causes a double effect on the persons importing the goods, and that was something that came up as well in our conversation. So possibly looking at the computation of the custom duties based on the cost of the good itself and the insurance, and not necessarily the freight, which may change considerably given the socioeconomic state that we're in. We also looked at some of the policies that could be put in place, and it was clear that there was a need more so for sensitization than anything else, so that persons are aware of the opportunities that exist, because we were able to identify quite a few opportunities that were just not known to some persons. We also felt that in terms of the concessions and other things that are available, they're seen as onerous. So yes, the concession may be available, but to access it may just be something that a small manufacturer or small producer may deem too onerous. Number of documents, number of trips to and from this entity or that entity, knowing which specific entity I should go to for my business. Is it commerce, or is it tourism, or is it agriculture that I go to for my concessions? Maybe streamlining that process so persons have a one-stop shop that they can go to, and thereafter it would be pivoted to whichever entity is responsible for the concession for these individuals. That was also a suggestion. And robust standards to allow persons for something to aim for. So yes, you're in the agricultural sector. What is really the standard for your product? We know what comes in, we know what mass you would like, we know what the hotels want by way of the size of the tomato, we know what they want for their products. Is that known to the farmers? What is the standard that is required for their produce, for their product, and how can they meet that standard? What is required by way of packaging? Does the information that the SLBS may have for packaging and labeling, is that being meted out to the producers? So some of these considerations would really benefit the local sector and also allow for better competition between themselves and the importers. Thank you.
The ideas keep coming in, and we're co-creating as we declared this morning. We continue on with taxation. The taxation table ready.
Good afternoon, Gabriela Regis Louis from Inland Revenue. So we discussed the different issues outlined for taxation, and one of the biggest points that came out is the inconsistent interpretation of tax laws. And that's something we've noted, and what we suggested is for there to be better communication on the part of Inland Revenue with taxpayers and stakeholder groups. So that would take twofold in that one. What we're looking at is the establishment of a dedicated customer care and call center. So all queries, questions, requests are channeled through those groups of persons. So if it's simple,
you get a response immediately. If it is more complex, then you get your technical persons involved. But at least the taxpayer would have gotten some sort of information acknowledgement. So that's one. And then also looking at it from the inconsistent interpretation is sometimes the private sector understands it one way, Inland Revenue a different way. So if we develop a comprehensive taxpayer outreach plan, which will address all of those issues, including general information to the public on legislative changes, FAQs, so that deals with simple matters, identified gray areas. We do technical notes, meetings, discussions with the stakeholders. So we have an idea of what they understand, what we don't understand, and then we could have discussions to see how it is those matters would be addressed. So that deals with the inconsistent interpretation of tax laws. The other thing is our legislation is dated, and we are aware of that because it was brought out this morning on more than one occasion about our penalties and interest. And Inland Revenue has commenced work, and then there's been a bottleneck. So we need to recommence that work with the stakeholder consultations dealing with the Tax Administration and Procedures Act. So we need to recommence this, and then also for us to get to the point of implementation and enactment of that act. So it will address the outdated penalties and interest and other issues with the administration of the law. Now, the other issue that was identified was administrative inefficiencies. So we are aware that there are delays in processing of requests for things like tax compliance letters. So in doing that, what should be done is for us to set our service standards and to stick to it. So if we say it's going to take 5 days for a compliance letter to be processed, ensure that it takes 5 days. 5 days. No, I'm just using that as an example. I'm not stating that's what it is. So when we set the service standards, once a taxpayer is compliant, then you get the letter within that set time. So then in doing all of that will be published in a taxpayer charter. So a taxpayer knows what are Inland Revenue's service standards. And then in so doing, they will also know their rights and obligations as a taxpayer and what recourse they would have if we do not stick to our service standards. Okay? And the other thing we noted with administration is the complex compliance requirements for small businesses, because small businesses essentially have to have detailed financial statements similar to large companies. So what was discussed is that you have a simplified accounting system for micro and small businesses and look at exploring the option of implementing a presumptive tax system for those businesses. So it would be simpler record keeping, not as cumbersome, and it would not cost them as much money to have to pay accountants and auditors. And then the other thing is to ensure that we have uniformity of application of everything that we do. So no matter who you call at Inland Revenue, whether it's be a junior staff or senior staff, we all saying the same thing. So that means training and also explanations to taxpayers as to what are the processes, issuing of checklists, so they are aware at the point that they're coming into Inland Revenue. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Breakout group on taxation. We have some Facebook comments. Iron Mike, given that liquidity across the ECCU banking system remains relatively strong, particularly under the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank framework, how can financial institutions in St. Lucia strategically recalibrate their internal credit policies and risk appetite to better translate this liquidity into increased private sector lending and improved ease of doing business without compromising prudential standards? We have some other Facebook comments coming up in just a bit. In the meantime, the breakout group on international trade. Are you ready?
I'm told there's no need to stick to formalities. They are implied. Our group looked at challenges facing our trading community. We are asked to report on the three top issues being faced. The first one is major delays in imports processes. Now, in doing our work, we tried to be guided by the framework that is being rolled out by the World Bank under the Business Ready framework. And so with respect to import delays, we found that aligned with Pillar 1 of the Business Ready Index, under sub-index 1.2, which looks at restrictions on trade. We looked at a number of issues under that subheading, and these include delays related to transportation, for example, inland transportation after the carrier or the port has provided release. And that is really situational or because of circumstances associated with the management of chassis by truckers in trying to go in and out of the ports to shift chassis and to load full containers and park them out, go back in with an empty chassis and with an empty, etc., until they have moved all their clients' goods outside the ports. And so some clients are affected by that and in getting their containers a lot later than may have been expected because of the need to do that. You may have one truck having to move 5 chassis. That means how many trips in and out, and so you have a lot of delays after clearance have been provided by the carrier and the port. That is something that has to be discussed with the truckers themselves and with the Department of Transport for resolution. Of course, there are other issues that flow out of that, such as safety, and we have heard some things in the news of late which we can talk about. But that is one of the problems, one of the aspects of factors or circumstances affecting delays here. Another issue that we had was insufficient cargo, insufficient capacity in some jurisdictions that inhibit niche product shipments. Here we are talking about, no, okay, I think I'm jumping ahead. I'm talking about exports. I'll get back to that. Let me stick with my imports.
Each table has 3 minutes in order to present their...
Okay, no problem. We'll stick with the 3 minutes. I should be guided by this. We have the issue of, I'll jump ahead. We have the issue of challenges being faced by our exporters. And some of the challenges is inaccurate data collection because of the practice where some exports are exported without export certificates. So that creates a need to reconcile the differences between what's in the Asecrida system and what another agency might have. But there are problems also with, there are implications from that practice because it creates a problem to verify that the good is a bona fide good that has gone through the process of being certified. And we do not want to have to answer our name, so to speak, for goods that have not been accompanied by, by a certificate. There's also a new requirement for what we call VGM certificate. I think the IMO has introduced that, so that's another requirement. In each of these, we are recommending training for certified brokers, and we want a more harmonized system across CARICOM to deal with those things. Another issue that we have very quickly has to do with the electronic single window. How can the electronic single window improve trade efficiency? That falls under Pillar 2 of the Business Ready Index, sub-index 2.1.1, digital and physical infrastructure, including electronic systems and interoperability of services. So the problem really is that currently we still have archaic systems where we have to make multiple submissions of hard copies of documents and physically present ourselves to the various border regulatory agencies in order to lodge documents to facilitate importing. This is outdated, and we need a more modern management and regulatory framework, and the electronic single window would provide that. And there's a recommendation, though, for a special purpose vehicle to be established to operate a single window, something that can be discussed in a sort of a PPP framework. I'm not saying that I put that out there because it was a recommendation from our group. And finally, we have the issue of customs classifications. We found that while customs do a very good job with classification for the most part, but we do have cases where there are some disputes and issues with classification, especially how that relates to excise tax rates with certain goods. We have had recently a class of goods called RTDs that have been suffering from this, and that has implications for not only tax revenue, but for the competitiveness of domestically produced goods. And so this is something that we would like to see priority attention given to this, and by standardizing or revisiting the excise rates that have applied to those goods. Am I any more time? I'm done. Okay, well, with that, I will rest. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Breakout Group International Trade, for that roundup. We have a comment, Rita Schillingford. One of the key issues affecting the ease of doing business in St. Lucia is the speed and efficiency of government office and government agencies processing. Delays in approvals, registration, responses, and routine administrative matters can create unnecessary bottlenecks for investors, entrepreneurs, and existing businesses trying to operate efficiently. We have the next breakout group, Utility Services. Are you ready?
Anyway, I'm presenting for my group. We had robust discussion as well, but Wasco took up all of it. And so the key issue was availability and accessibility of water. We saw that as a major issue. And the root cause is climate change, lack of water on the island, increased usage by business, community, and households. Now, Wasco had a executive luncheon yesterday. So if any of you were at it, you would have seen the entire presentation of all the things Wasco is planning to do. All right? So I wouldn't go into the details here. But they plan to do some work on a pipeline from Bonte to Grosley. And the raw water lines will be fixed. So there is some immediate work being done that will address part of the problem. Now, we were asked to talk about regulatory effectiveness. Now, from our perspective, and we had a regulator with us, the issue was strengthening the power of the regulator. So she believed there was the need for more agile and robust legislation. From a loose leg perspective, the key issue is the delay of the passage of the new Electricity Act. And the recommendation and the concern is that the act without regulations is going to create more frustration for the business community. So the recommendation is that the Electricity Act be passed along with the regulations, right? Because persons who may read the act may say things are missing, but you need to read the act with the regulation because it gives you the complete picture. The act is just the framework, and the regulation is how the sector is going to be managed. I think that's it. Did I miss anything, Cindy? Oh, flow. What can I say about flow? The, the, oh, there was no specific issue for flow. No, there was not. The issue, we had a representative from Flow, and the issue is he made that distinction. Sometimes the issues are user problems. Now, and the point is, the point here being, if you look at if you look at St. Lucia and the customer base, every one of us may have different experiences. I personally have no problems with Flow. Yeah? Now, someone else's experience would be totally different, and it could be where the placement is of their modem. They may have expectations that their signal can go through concrete walls. So there are many things that are issues. So there's nothing else. So that's what we have for my group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Utility Services Breakout Group. We have another comment. Why is the banking sector not accelerating its adoption of modern technologies at a pace that matches evolving customer expectations? And to what extent is this delay contributing to service inefficiencies and customer dissatisfaction? We continue with the breakout group presentations. Business location. Yes? Okay, are we missing any breakout groups? Business entry and labor. Okay, business entry, ready? Labor is ready to labor.
This is business entry. But I thought labor was ready to labor. Yes. Oh, so I won't need this. Adopting the protocol already established. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Villain Edward, and I am the legal officer assigned to the Department of Commerce. So today, our group discussions were centered around the process for registration and the start of operation of new businesses or companies within St. Lucia. Fortunately, for these discussions, we had with us the Registrar for Companies and Intellectual Property, along with a representative from IRD and key stakeholders within the private sector. Stemming from this, and we started off with the Registry of Companies. One key issue that came up was the process of company registration is a bit too lengthy and has a duplicated process. And as a result of this duplicated process, it results in a number of errors, because whereas you're entering this information on the online platform, you now have to physically draft the documents. So whereas you're now entering this here, you're drafting this here, there might be a few errors. And one of the issues is how would the Registry of Companies remedy this situation? As a result of such, it was indicated that right now, it isn't necessary for there to be this hybrid approach. However, the company's registry is in the process of having an auto-generated form for the for incorporation of companies, similar to that of the registration of businesses. So by entering the information on the online platform, you should be able, the online platform would generate said forms for you, and this would, as a result, well, as our logo states, result in the ease of doing business. Next up, we had Inland Revenue, a registration with Inland Revenue. Some of the issues you guys had were getting forms without instructions from Inland Revenue. Some of the information from Inland Revenue, it is not readily available to the public. Also, the registration form for TAN should be online. This information is not accessible. Some of the issues and the root cause from this was persons are not knowledgeable about the documentation itself and what is needed in order to file. Inland Revenue indicated to us that they have started the process for developing instructions for filing, for filling out online forms, and it also makes it easier for Inland Revenue itself. Also,
for our discussions, it was decided that maybe we can implement a few discussions, workshops in order to educate the public as to what the requirements are, how to file or request certain documents, and not only would it make it easier for Inland Revenue, but it would make it easier for the public at large. Next up, we had back to the registry of companies, and once again, the registration of businesses. The registrar indicated to us that it takes approximately 1 to 3 business days to either register a business or incorporate a company, although in certain instances, persons may have experienced a bit of a lengthier delay. This issue is as a result of incomplete applications or errors in relation to the filed documents. There are also issues with regards to staffing constraints, along with an increased volume of applications, not to mention the fact that during the periods of January to March, the registry is inundated with work as they are now dealing with the filing of annual returns as well. This issue can once be resolved by increased staffing in order to deal with the workload. We also noted with regards to queries coming out of Inland Revenue. The queries that have been raised, most times we don't know which officer was the one who prepared the statement, vetted the documents, and who wrote up the queries. For ease of doing business, it would be easy if we can have the name of the officer who has vetted said documentation, in order so we can easily reference the officer, reach out to them, and that way we can have direct contact with them in order to remedy the issue expeditiously. There was an issue in relation to human resources available and succession planning. There is a need for additional resources in order to manage more work processes efficiently. As a result, and this is not just for registry of companies or Inland Revenue, but across the government services, for all services being offered to the public. It has been noted that, an increase would manage the workload, and not only this, but if the increase in staff, those staff are provided with proper training, both in technical skills and soft skills, in order to efficiently attend to the public at hand. There were a few questions as to what processes are still physical within the registry of companies. And that is the post-incorporation aspect and subsequent changes to companies, notice of directors, change of secretaries, and so forth. ROCIP informed us that it intends to launch within at least 7 to 8 new services on the DigiGov platform, and are going to have stakeholder discussions in order to ensure that this process is seamless and perfect. Back to IRD. And this one is a bit touchy. In relation to clearances, there is the request for clearances, and how will IRD streamline this process for request for clearances? There are instances where taxpayers have not filed or are indebted to IRD, and that may delay the process for receipt of clearances. The representative from IRD informed us that the standard is that you should receive your non-indebted letter or your clearance letter within 2 days. IRD is looking into an automated response as well once these requests have been made electronically or via email, and there's a possibility of a reference number to be attached as a solution. So once you have your automated response, you can also track your application. IRD also indicated, and I believe they did so during the panel discussion, that they are in the process of reviewing and implementing a new system to deal with most requests and monitor and track requests as well. And finally, during our discussions, it was also noted, and yes, it does not deal with business entry, but the process for incorporation of non-profit companies. Most persons don't know, but in relation to the said process, it is a bit long, lengthy, tedious. And once a company is successful in incorporating a non-profit, the Attorney General's chambers, it's like they don't follow through on the company in relation to change of directors, change of owners, shareholders, and so forth. It would be nice if these entities could follow through and just have some oversight as to any changes with these institutions in order to ensure compliance with the regulations as well as the Companies Act. Thank you.
And finally, for our presentations of the breakout groups, labor. The breakout group, labor.
So how appropriate it is for labor to go after almost 9 months of waiting, huh? So, what is the name again? Akeem. I have a member on my committee, and he told me I need to deliver this joke because they made us wait so late and we were labor. So Akeem called the doctor. My wife is going into labor. What should I do? Is this her first child? He asked. No, this is her husband. You know, being last, you have to make sure everybody's awake, right? Now laugh at my joke, please. Laugh louder. So this is labor. This is one of the most important ingredients in any business. And without labor, you can't have a successful business. And so our team was very active. Imagine we discussed things like substance abuse and labor and workers getting high on the job, and that's affecting their quality. So we answered a few questions. And so among us, we had the labor department, we had NIC, NCPC, furniture, we even had the fashion sector with us. One of the questions that we answered was, what is the most critical skill shortages affecting businesses? And this is a question we couldn't fully answer because, as the labor department has indicated, many skills have been requested of them on a daily basis. And so a skills register was what we proposed that is going to be so vital. And with the skills register, you come to the labor department. Also, we've also identified the labor department as the champion for this. And so you come to the labor department and you ask for plumbers. You ask for the different job sets that we are looking for. And so one of the things that we also identified was that we had a baker, Mr. Glass, he's on our table, and he says one of the problems that he's having is that he cannot get young people. And he cannot get young people because probably they don't see it as attractive. So our fashionista said it's because it doesn't seem to be sexy. And this resonated strongly because if you make a job attractive, people will want to gravitate to it. And so we said we need to promote businesses such as plumbing, such as baking. And he actually said the bakers, his baker gets more money than the persons who go on a cruise ship in certain fields. So we didn't know that. And so we need to make it more attractive. And so there's a lot of promotion that has to go into getting young persons to not only see the financial sector as, the banking sector as the most attractive job. We have some financial people that they always dress high and fancy. So the bakers have to be looked that way as well. We also spoke about the soft skills. That is a major gap. People not even be able to say good morning, not able to learn how to put on the right outfits to come to work, not being able to have discerning skills like how to answer for the etiquette. That is a major issue for our business sector. And so we need to have the soft skills training. And we identified, what is the name? TVET, to help lead that. And so these are some of the areas that we looked at. Now, we didn't look at a lot of areas because I heard persons, going on and on, but we have 2 minutes and we're going to stick to it. There was another thing that we spoke about, succession planning for small businesses. And this is very important. So we have the youth economy, and I see the minister, I'm staring at him. A lot of small businesses are opening, but how many of them are staying and thriving? And even some of our family businesses, how many of them are being passed on to the families? How many of the children see it as important? And so we need to be able to make some of those small businesses understand the business principles, and that goes to training, that goes back to TVET, that goes back to all the efforts to go back to Sir Arthur Lois Community College, have more persons, especially from secondary school, learn at least one trade subject. We need to be able to have persons pass on real skills that help develop the businesses. And so succession planning becomes a very important thing that we felt was vital for business success. So it makes very little sense to us that we're going to push the youth economy, but we're not going to push the longevity of those businesses. And so that's going to be very important. And one of the things that our baker said that is also hindering the quality of persons that he gets is a substance abuse issue. too many of our people, he says, are smoking, the young people, and it's affecting them severely. They're unable to work properly, they're unable to contribute, and so that is a big issue. And so we need to promote abstinence of the drug, is it right? Or the education that goes along with it. So the government has, in a sense, made it easier for persons to have a recreational marijuana, but they're smoking too much of it. Smoking too much of it. And so this is a problem. So this, we have identified this, and he says it's a major, major issue. I'm not sure if other employers are finding this, but this is one of the areas that we spent much time on how we could correct this. So with this, thank you very much.
Thank you all for your presentations. We've come to the end of the presentation of action points. As indicated by our Permanent Secretary this morning, identifying the priorities, assigning responsibilities, and setting timelines. That's what it's all about for the Ease of Doing Business Forum. You will be hearing from us very soon. We will be following up on these efforts, and we will let you know how you can continue to contribute. As we come to the tail end of our program, we now want to invite the confirmed director of the Investment Coordination Unit, Minister. Okay, so we'll first hear from Minister, the Honorable Minister, and then we will hear from our director. So just give him a warm welcome as we wrap up for the afternoon.
Thank you very much, Jesse. We said we're having the reception at 5, so we want to make sure we finish at 5. I'm sure you would not want the wine to be... It's only 4:30? Yeah. I want to start by really expressing my sincere thanks on behalf of the Permanent Secretary and the staff of the ministry for all of you who turned up today and stayed throughout the day. The Honorable Prime Minister stepped out, but I'm sure he too would be very happy to have seen the turnout today. And of course, the colleague ministers who came out to support and collectively for us to make a statement that we take this matter, the ease of doing business, seriously. And I think colleagues spent the entire day, the Minister of Economic Development, the CABSEC, the AG, Minister of Agriculture, and Minister in the Ministry of Tourism. So we're really happy and very, very encouraged. And I say that because we want to ensure that the private sector and business persons like yourselves really become partners in this strategic initiative, and not as passive bystanders, and certainly not as marginalized organizations in the process. And I think this morning it was mentioned by one of the participants, I think it's Mr. Begas, that in days gone by, the private sector was asked, or the chamber was asked to nominate persons to be on boards. And as if it doesn't happen these days, I'm not sure that's entirely correct. We still have to consult according to legislation where it provides for the private sector to be present. But the fact is there's so many more organizations now. So in some instances, you have to consider other relevant organizations and not necessarily the chamber on every instance. But the point remains that we want to make sure this is a partnership. It will not succeed if it's not a partnership. So we are going to ensure that we continue that relationship. And therefore, I'm not going to go and recount and recap the points made, but to say to you in moving forward that there are a number of critical steps that we need to take. Firstly, for me as minister, I need to continue having regular consultation with the various stakeholders. We started in the month of January, part of December, where I met most of the agencies and associations involved, and that will have to continue. For me, it was very refreshing. The new minister within this portfolio and hearing from all the stakeholders, and I wish that I would be able to continue to do so, and to also encourage you to always be frank and open with us. It doesn't make sense you'd come to a meeting, tell half the story, and when we're not there, tell the other half elsewhere. You come to a meeting in a very mature, responsible way. You put it on the table, we discuss it, we may disagree. It is what maturity is about, it's what professionalism is about. And we need to do so. If you don't like something, you express it, we debate it, we discuss it, and then we see how we can move forward. And that, for me, is how we should conduct our business. So when you do come to meetings, I encourage everyone to speak freely and say what you have to say. Let's not be afraid to debate and let ideas contend. So we will continue the dialogue. We'll continue to speak with you to hear what you're saying. Some time ago, there used to be a Ease of Doing Business task force, and I think the time has come for us to reactivate it. It comprises representatives of the private sector and the public sector and was chaired by the Ministry of Commerce. And this time we will reflect whether we would still let the Ministry of Commerce to chair it or probably let the private sector chair it. It might be better or do a co-chairing, the public sector and private sector. But let's reactivate the task force that will monitor the work that we're doing. You'd recall in my statement this morning, I indicated that we hope this will become an annual affair. Of course, next year it will take a different form because we'd have already established the baseline from our engagement today. So come next year, we would want to be able to report to you on the progress that we've made. We want to be able to come out of this engagement today and with the information we have to actually have the unit, the business facilitation unit at the Ministry of Commerce, which will be set up. And if you listen to the debate on the estimates, provisions were made to set up a business facilitation unit at the Ministry of Commerce, that it will be given the responsibility to oversee the implementation of the Ease of Doing Business agenda. So we would have a fully established unit overseeing the implementation. And of course, like I said, the task force will have a relationship to ensure that we proceed with the work that we have to do. I think a point was made this morning about the use of quality management, systems in terms of ensuring that we can monitor our implementation. We can implement all those necessary processes to ensure that we are impactful in what we do. So I'm really hoping the unit, I think the Prime Minister announced this morning, he's delivering his budget statement, his policy statement on the 21st of April. So once that is done, and I'm sure it is going to pass in the House, we can then well, you never know. Yeah. I'm sure we can get started as soon as possible, because engagement must lead to decisive action. It doesn't make sense we have engagement, it doesn't make sense we meet, and if we cannot let that translate into action. And I'm looking forward to the unit really becoming a very active unit, and for us to be really engaged with each other. We want to be able to measure our progress. We want to be speaking to each other. We want to be implementing and boasting of our successes. And at the end of the day, and in closing, I think what's important to us, and we said so this morning, and it's really important, we want to build a business ecosystem in St. Lucia that can fulfill the ambitions of St. Lucians. The ambition of St. Lucians to own a part of St. Lucia. And the Prime Minister said it this morning. We must not be afraid to tell our people, go out and get rich legally, as he said. We should not be ashamed to say to our young people, get into business. Go and create your own small business. And those who are already in business, look at how you can expand. And in particular, we have to start telling our manufacturers in St. Lucia, think export. Think of beyond our shores. An economy grows and prospers more when it exports. So it's not just about producing for the domestic market. And Export St. Lucia, Sunita, I'm not sure if she's still here, but they're doing a fantastic job already in taking St. Lucian products and presenting it to the world. And not just goods, but goods and services as well. Our creatives, the fashion industry. There's so much that we are doing and so much more that we're capable of doing. So let's tell St. Lucians that. Go out, expand your business, invest. Those who have not yet started a business, think of starting one. It is why we established the Youth Economy Agency, to tell our young people, make your dream become a reality. Let your hobby become a business. And we provided the support to make it happen. And very soon, we'll be setting up the Small Business Development Center that will replace SEDO. That will be a one-stop shop to promote and to really accelerate the involvement of St. Lucians in small businesses. So we need to create that ecosystem in St. Lucia that will inspire St. Lucians to get more involved in business development in this country. And for St. Lucians to be proud that they are investing and they are contributing to the progress of this country. And they own in St. Lucia, which is the most important thing for us, and certainly in this government. So our dream is that we'll create this business ecosystem. This will mean nothing if we don't have the ease of doing business. If despite all what we see, it's not easy for somebody to set up a business, it's not easy for businesses to grow in St. Lucia, we to come to naught. So this is what this is all about for us. And I'm sure, and I encourage all of you to listen to the policy statement in the next couple of weeks, where more information will be provided as to the direction we are taking this country. So this is an important journey. And I want all of you not to just be bystanders, but to be part of it, to be partners with us along this journey. So we will act decisively as a government, and I promise you we will deliver. So let's enjoy the reception. And let me put in a plug for the Jimmy's on Saturday. Those of you who will be attending, look forward to a fantastic night. And of course, jazz is coming up. And there are no complimentary tickets this year, I'm told, by Mr. Antoine. So just saying so. But thank you so very much. I think we've had a wonderful day, and thank you so much.
And so that was word from our Commerce and Investment Minister, Honorable Dr. Ernest Hilaire. And finally, we want to hear from our Director of the Investment Coordination Unit. This was the spearheading unit of the Department of Commerce for today's activity. I want you to give Ms. Regis a round of applause. Tourism, commerce, investment, culture, creative industries, and heritage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Gratitude turns efforts into achievement, and today I can say that we are well on our way to achieving great things through this Ease of Doing Business Forum. Barriers will be broken and better business enabled. This day has not simply passed. It has spoken. It has stirred and it has left its imprint on the work we are called to do. As we come to the close of what has been a truly engaging and meaningful day, I wish to extend on behalf of the ministry our heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you. First of all, to all participants, those present here at the Financial Center, and those who joined us virtually, thank you for your time, your presence, and your willingness to be part of this important conversation. Your engagement today is a clear demonstration that improving the business environment in St. Lucia is a shared priority. To our moderators and panelists, we express sincere appreciation. You did more than just facilitate discussion. You helped to simplify complex processes, bring clarity to key issues, and most importantly, guide us towards practical, solution-oriented thinking. Your contributions set the tone for the depth and quality of dialogue we experience today. To our stakeholders across the private and public sectors, thank you. Today was a powerful reminder that progress does not happen in isolation. As was emphasized earlier, meaningful reform cannot take place in silos. It requires collaboration, openness, and trust. And today, we saw that in action. I would like to take a moment to recognize those who work tirelessly behind the scenes to make today a success. A very special thank you to our Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Sophia Alfie Henry, who truly served as the backbone of this planning process. Your leadership, guidance, and steady hand kept us focused and moving forward. To Alana, thank you. You are my right hand throughout this entire process. Your dedication and commitment did not go unnoticed. To Jessie, to our very own superwoman, you made things happen, often quietly, but always effectively. We are deeply grateful. To Melisha, thank you for your high-level support and for always ensuring that we remained aligned and on track. And to the entire Ease of Doing Business team/committee, you were simply outstanding. The late-night Zoom calls, the coordination, the problem solving, and most importantly, the constant reassurance that everything would come together, that was the true essence of this effort. The work ahead is significant, but we are encouraged. We have started, we have brought the right people to the table, and together we are moving towards the right solution. Let us leave here with a shared commitment, not just to talk, but to act. Not just to identify challenges, but to implement change. Because at the end of the day, Ease of Doing Business is our business. Once again, thank you all for your participation, your insights, and your continued partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not departing just yet. You will be escorted to the balcony where you can indulge in some beverages and the dialogue will continue in a more relaxed setting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Regis. And with that, we're almost done. We forgot our breakout group. Profuse apologies. They did want to make their presentation, so if you would just give us 3 more minutes. Breakout group on the Zoom, you have 3 minutes. Take it away.
Good evening. Can you hear us clearly? Good evening, everyone. We're going to take less than 3 minutes. What we wanted to say is that for any business to work in the way that it should, we think it's down to public service reform. My name is Mandy Preble-Finley. I'm the director of Beyond Danola and a St. Lucian living in London. On the Zoom with me were persons from across the world who are of St. Lucian heritage, and we truly believe that public service reform starts with making a decision about what we want our public service to be like. There will be no reform without public service reform. There'll be no ease of doing business there. And that includes not just public service from what happens on island, but focusing on the diaspora itself, seeing where we are, what it is we want to contribute, and pushing through in a coordinated way. So we call for action towards public sector reform and action towards not only in including the diaspora in what happens, but also in the decision-making from the very beginning. I'm going to leave it at that. For now, I know you're all eager to leave. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. You have been wonderful. We thank you for your active participation today. Do enjoy the rest of your evening and journey mercies. Cheers, everyone. Goodbye. Don't go anywhere.
I didn't think we needed to say.
Stick around, everybody. Hang around. We have drinks, merriment, networking.